this gentleman right here is the author of this book. It's called Listen Liberal. And if you read this book, it will make you a radical. I want to make the case about what's really wrong, the rot inside the Democratic Party. So people get mad at me now because they say, hey, why do you keep criticizing the corporate Democrats? We're supposed to. My theory was that you're supposed to come together on the left to oppose Trump, which is what I said. I said if Hillary Clinton became president, we would continue our slide downward, and that right now half the country is living in poverty or poor. By the end of her first term, it would be probably up to 60% or 65% people poor and poverty. 33 million people still don't have health coverage. I predicted that number would grow. We have half the country makes less than $30,000 a year. I predicted that would also grow, that more people would earn less than a living wage. So all these things would become worse in 4 years, and I said that then we'd get an even worse Trump. Well, I was wrong in a sense that we got Trump right now, which actually is a frickin' gift to the Democrats, because if he's as huge and incompetent as they say he is, he'll be able to be beaten in 4 more years with a real Democratic Party. The problem is we still have the thing that led us to Trump. The problem isn't Trump. He hasn't been president ever yet, and we're living in a shit society. The problem is the system that's so disaffected so many voters that we have Trump, and it's the system we need to critique. And I can walk and chew gum at the same time. I can hold the Democrats' corporate feet to the fire. At the same time, I can oppose bad policies by Donald Trump, and people don't seem to get that. My whole thing was that if Hillary Clinton was president, it puts the left to sleep. Just like you didn't know about habeas corpus, that jagoff political scientist didn't know about it, but I know about it. Just like the left doesn't know that Bill Clinton wasn't the greater good. He was actually the greater evil, just like Hillary Clinton was the greater evil. And why was Bill Clinton the greater evil? I'll tell you why right now. Bill Clinton did stuff that that Republicans could only dream of doing in their wet dreams. Ronald Reagan could not repeal New Deal banking legislation. Ronald Reagan could not pass NAFTA. Exactly. George Bush couldn't pass NAFTA. It took Bill Clinton to pass NAFTA and stick a knife in the back of unions. At the same time, he exploded the prison population, gutted welfare, and consolidated the media. Ronald Reagan couldn't take 50 giant media companies and turn them into 6. It took a Democrat to do all that shit. There is no greater frontman for the corporation. There's no greater frontman for the corporation, military-industrial complex, big pharma, and Wall Street than Barack Obama and Bill Clinton. Correct?
Well, okay, I don't think. Bill Clinton is the big bad guy in Listen Liberal. He is I think his. We started off the show talking about the Reagan Revolution. Clinton is really the guy who brought it together. Clinton is the guy that got it done. Okay, Reagan couldn't get. There's all sorts of things he couldn't. He had no chance of getting done. You mentioned bank deregulation. That's a huge one. Clinton deregulated all through his administration, one measure after another. He got this done that Reagan absolutely couldn't. I think Barack Obama is nowhere near as bad as that. I think Barack Obama is mainly a case of timidity. I think he was. I really don't know what motivated him. But this is a man who I think his heart was in the right place, but he continually stopped short or did the wrong thing. You look at everything all these measures were half-assed. Everything was half-assed. The bank bailouts, the stimulus program. We could talk about that for a long time. I mean, talk about a missed opportunity. By the way, I went to the elementary school I went to in Kansas City was built by the WPA. They're still growing up as a kid. We still knew in the 70s that Franklin Roosevelt was a hero. He had built our school. He built, all of these great monuments in downtown Kansas City. When we go and, spend all of this money on the Obama stimulus package, we still don't, do you know? Well, if you look it up, you can figure out what it spent on these projects here and there, but there's nothing monumental about it. There's nothing memorable, no imagination to it. It's just like blow the money and walk away. Totally half-assed. Obamacare, which is his great monument, his great achievement. This is a compromise with a compromise with a compromise. It was bound to fail. And by the way, bound to fail. I shouldn't put it that harshly, but the way it was set up, it was, well, okay, long story short, people keep talking about the grand reasons that Hillary lost, what you and I have just been talking about, and then the proximate reasons, the screw ups here and there. Two of the biggest screw ups that Democrats will not talk about. One is that Obamacare premiums got raised like a month before the election. Like, what the hell were they thinking? It's like, ask yourself, would Lyndon Johnson ever allow something like that to happen? Another one is, while Hillary's out there on the campaign trail, Trump is, we can all see that Trump's main play here is to win the white working class with his talk about trade, or at least I can see that, right? I wrote about it many times. Everybody can see that. And Hillary's trying desperately to not look like she's in favor of these trade deals. And here's Obama pushing the TPP at the same time, right up till the end.
That's exactly what I was. I would go on the Young Turks, and I would go on whatever show would have me, and I would say, "Are you really shocked that the people in the Rust Belt wouldn't vote for Hillary Clinton, who's associated with NAFTA, at the same time she's associated with Barack Obama, who at the top of his lungs was pushing the TPP? And you wonder why people who were screwed over by these trade deals didn't come out to vote for Hillary Clinton? Are you really that stupid?" And then you know what they would say to me? Russia, 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 Russia. I'm not kidding. I mean, everybody from political pundits who call themselves lefty, who repeat propaganda from the CIA, unsourced, uncritical. If there is a bigger falling down on the job, if there's a bigger malfeasance being committed right now by the journalists in America than repeating CIA propaganda that is not sourced, I'd like to see it, because you don't deserve to be a journalist if you do that. If you report that stuff, which is nothing more than a rumor, it's not even an accusation. It doesn't even rise to the level of an accusation, because if you have no evidence sourced, that's just a rumor. And that's what all the media is doing. And a lot of people who call themselves truth tellers are just spewing propaganda for the CIA. It's disgusting. Every once in a while, a real journalist, a real journalist breaks through and reminds everybody that there's no evidence for this. And I don't know if you know, the CIA are so why would the CIA are such a nice bunch of people? They commit murder, torture, and overthrow democratically elected regimes before breakfast. Why the fuck shouldn't we believe them?
Okay, by the way, you're talking about journalists, and I am a journalist, and I spend a lot of time around other journalists, and they come from a very particular social background. They all went to the same schools, and they tend to know each other, and they come from the same neighborhood. They're affluent people by and large, and they share a lot of the same. This is one of the things that comes from understanding the Democrats as a class party, a party that they have a lot of different people from different walks of life in the Democratic Party, but the group that runs the Democratic Party are all from this one particular social class, and journalists are from that class as well, and they see eye to eye with these people. These people are scared. What I'm getting at is that they are casting around for any kind of explanation that gets their heroes off the hook. This is all, like I said, it's not psychological in some sense. It's sociological. This is people desperately looking for something that gets them and their friends off the hook. And it's also, they're looking at a very scary future right now. Everybody in the city is very frightened. We've elected a guy to the presidency who has no business being there, and the people are desperate. It's funny because now they're feeling what all those people in the Rust Belt were feeling.
So I would say that someone who full-throated gave her endorsement to an illegal war in Iraq that she knew was wrong, but she did it for political purposes, knowing hundreds, if not millions of people would be killed. And then she learned the exact wrong lesson from that, went for a more muscular response into Libya, what she did in Honduras, and then she wanted a more muscular response in Syria. I would say that person is unfit for elected office. That's what I would say. Donald Trump just happens to be an asshole. Hillary Clinton is a certified war criminal who's learned nothing. Am I wrong about that? Point out where I'm wrong about that.
That's so I don't. You read Listen Liberal. I don't go into foreign policy. The only part I do is what they call the Hillary Doctrine, and then so when she was Secretary of State, she had this great idea, the Hillary Doctrine, and then she had two ideas as Secretary of State. One was the Hillary. Nobody cares about this anymore, but the other was what she called internet freedom. And I loved that one, where she would go around the world talking about how everybody should have access to the one great internet or something like that. And this is, of course, before the Snowden scandal broke. This is before any of the big the evidence of mass surveillance broke. Any of that stuff happened, and she had this completely naive and what you would like ecstatic understanding of what the internet was. And by the way, this continues with her. I went to a Hillary Clinton event about a year ago, and it was the same kind of stuff. They go on and on and on about how this device is saving civilization, is making us all, is going to save the people, the poor people of the world. Crap, this kind of crazy internet enthusiasm right out of the 1990s. It's kind of ironic in a way that it's the internet first her emails and then Podesta's emails that did her in, or that helped to do her in. It's highly ironic, but the Libya thing you can definitely lay at her doorstep is my feeling about it. That's the one that she claimed that she was proud of it, and Trump did emphasize it. He did talk about it in the campaign. It's not like nobody noticed or anything like that. That cost her, I think.
Yeah, I definitely think it cost her. I think, in your book, there's many things that made me scream at the top of my lungs. One of them was a quote from Larry Summers. Now, people, if you don't know who Larry Summers is, he was a big economic advisor to Bill Clinton. He considers himself a Democrat.
He's Secretary of the Treasury. He was Treasury Secretary.
Treasury Secretary under Bill Clinton, and did he have an official position with Barack Obama, or was he just considered?
Yes, he was the head of the National Economic Council for the first 2 years. He was the chief economic advisor to Obama.
So, a thing you barely hear people talk about, Barack Obama talked about it briefly in his big last speech, was about income inequality. And it's funny because the good thing about Barack Obama was he hammered that every day of his presidency. So it got really lodged in the American consciousness that income. He never almost ever talked about that. So, but
he did give a famous speech about it. Remember, it was right after Occupy. Do you remember this?
Yeah, you mean after right after he let all the Democratic mayors order union cops to go crack the heads of peaceful protesters who had a legitimate grievance with fucking Wall Street? You mean right after that?
Right after that. Yeah.
What did he say?
He did give that speech. Yeah.
What did he say?
Oh, I don't remember. It was but it was remarkable because it was in Osawatomie, Kansas. It's the only time I think he ever set foot in Kansas in his presidency.
Well, because he didn't
that's why I remember.
It was probably right in between when he let them crack the heads of the peaceful protesters at Occupy and right before he didn't go to Wisconsin and put on that comfortable shoe at the Union. I mean, it's just the guy's a failure. I mean, I know you're being way too nice to Barack Obama, but Barack Obama was a buffoon who missed his chance. And we're living in Trump because of Barack Obama. And there's no doubt. And I know you know that in your heart. And I know you feel.
I agree with the second part. I still respect him as an individual. I think he's, I love
elegant.
Listening to him. He has that voice, he has that way of, and he has a way with words. I mean, come on, let's acknowledge that. And but yes, I think when you talk about his legacy now, you have to say Trump is part of his legacy. You can't get around that.
Remember
you can't write that out of the picture.
And his legacy is bringing us a right-wing healthcare plan that the insurance companies and Big Pharma cheered on. He didn't stand up to anybody to implement that. He had the wind at his back to implement that by corporations. And when it came time to institute a public option, which, by the way, is a real solution to the problem, instead of fighting for the public option he went to Dennis Kucinich's district and told people to primary him that he was standing in the way of health care for them because he was standing up for the public option. And what Barack Obama didn't do was go to Ben Nelson's state and tell people that's what Ben Nelson was doing because he was the one standing in the way of the public option and not Dennis Kucinich. So he did the bidding of the most rabid right-wing corporatist in the world. And that's why he's a buffoon. And that's why you're wrong that he's a nice person. And that's why you're wrong when you say he had his heart in the right place. Did he have his heart in the right place when he went to Dennis Kucinich's district?
No, you're right about that, about the public option. And I would actually add to that. do you remember at the time there? This is in 2009. All the same people that came out and wouldn't permit criticism of Hillary and that sort of thing were dogpiling on the public option and calling the people who were in favor of it, it was unrealistic. These were these sort of liberal, these outrageous dreamers. There was no way they could possibly get the. It was the exact same criticism that they later applied to Bernie Sanders. It was exactly the same. What makes it really poignant and ironic is one of the things that Obama has said here just in the last few months is, we need a public option. He's like, I figured out what was wrong with Obamacare. I figured out what I did wrong. I know now what's missing. It's the public option.
So I would.
Oh, well.
So I would disagree. So that would be one small point of disagreement I have with you, that his heart was not in the right place. But I wanted to just quickly read that quote from Larry Summers, where they talk about why income inequality happened. And I'm going to butcher this quote, but he said that truth is the ultimate disequalizer. He said that one of the reasons inequality has gone up is because people are being treated closer to how they're supposed to be being treated. He actually said that. Yeah. Can you tell me what that means?
That he thinks it's reasonable, is what it sounds like. That appears in Ron Susskind's book, Confidence Men, and it's there you have it. So the whole, basically that quote is kind of it opens the door to understanding who this class of people is that runs the Democratic Party. And the Republicans tend to be they're in love with this kind of Ayn Rand theory of the world, where you work yourself up. Work your way up in the corporation, and you make things, and you're a constructor of great buildings and this kind of thing, and you're rewarded for that. You're rewarded according to your ability and to how hard you work. And Democrats have a very similar theory, but you're rewarded according to a different scale, and it's how you did in school. Okay, this is essential for the professional class. Where you went to college, like what you got on your SATs, how you grade the GPA, what you did in college, where you went to graduate school, what kind of professional you are. You at a good firm, you at a lousy firm, this sort of thing. And that's utterly essential to them. And, if you just, you switch the idea of school instead of the corporation, and it's exactly the same thing. They think that everybody is rewarded exactly as they're supposed to be rewarded. It's just that school is a huge part of determining how you do in life, and they think that is totally and completely fair. So and yes, they believe in inequality. They believe in it.
So if you're talking the corporate Democrats actually believe in inequality, and so when they see a fight for 15 going on in the country, it's easy for Hillary to turn her back on those people because you don't deserve 15. If you did, you would be getting it, right, because we live in a meritocracy, and you're really attacking capitalism.
You would have gone to a better school. You would have gone to a better school. You would have worked your way up. Now, you and I, everybody knows that there's this argument, the idea of the meritocracy has like a million holes in it. And we could sit here and spend, another hour pointing out what all the flaws in this philosophy are. I mean, there's many, many, many of them. But you just put your finger on the main one, which is this is not a doctrine for mitigating inequality. This is a doctrine for rationalizing inequality and for saying how reasonable inequality is and how reasonable it is that the people on top get their rewards. Now, Democrats tend to be less savage on this than the Republicans are, and they like to help out the poor. They're kind-hearted. And so they will often say that they believe in things like the minimum wage. What they don't believe in, what really rubs them the wrong way, is the idea of working people demanding something of their own, getting together and forming, say, a union, some kind of organization where they can then confront their boss. Because the whole philosophy of unions is solidarity. We deserve this not because we're smart. We deserve it because we're humans. And here we are together, and there's nothing you can do about it. And that's the sort of the great sort of philosophy of working class organizations. What I'm talking about with the Democrats is something completely different. It's the completely opposite idea. It's everybody for themselves. Everybody studying for the SAT all on their own little cubicle, and the SAT will sort us all out, and it'll send some of us to Harvard, and some of us to Central Missouri State, and some of us will, be working at the fast food restaurant. Oh my God!
So the problem is, Thomas,
you're tiring me out.
Okay, well, I'll let you go in just a second, okay? The problem is that philosophy, what you just described, is not consistent with the traditional theory of the Democratic Party. It's consistent with the theory of the Republican Party. So they have actually morphed into one party. And there is no more opposition party in America to these corporatist ideas. And they wonder why people voted for Trump. They wonder why there's no Democrats in statewide houses. There's no governorships. There's nobody in the They've lost the Senate. Now they've lost to Donnie Tynahan's Trump. It's unbelievable. And they still won't accept this diagnosis. And it's not about economics. It's all about identity politics. And all of a sudden.
And it's also, but Jimmy, there's another thing that I mentioned this earlier, but I sort of brushed by it. They for a long time they wouldn't admit that they were losing the white working class either. This was this is what's the matter with Kansas was about. And then there was this whole backlash to it. These Democrats basically decided that it was not true and it was false alarm, and they didn't need to worry about it. There was nothing to worry about. And look what just happened. I wonder. I'm like sitting here watching this and wondering how are they going to contrive to ignore. When the Rust Belt, Wisconsin turns against them.
Russia, they say Russia. What they do is
what are they going to do now?
They say
How are they
Russia.
Going to brush this off? And just to add to this, I want to say a couple more things, and then you can then I've got to. I'm about to faint here.
Okay.
But one more thing I want to remind you of about the Clintons is that the Clintons and the Clinton faction in the Democratic Party are supposed to be the winning faction. They are. They're the compromise faction. They sell you out all the time. This is the whole idea in the 90s. They'll sell you out. They'll get the Republican agenda enacted. They'll do all these terrible things, but they win. And that's all that matters at the end of the day. They win. Well, they don't. What happens when they aren't the winning faction anymore? They sell you out. They sell out all the principles. They move to the center. They triangulate, all this stuff, and they don't win. What's the point anymore?
I did read your column. I did read your article. I did read your article in Harper's because I remember quoting you on air that you said that in that article about the whole reason for this whole strategy that the Democrats have been employing of meaning getting in bed with corporations and Wall Street and selling out unions and doing trade deals like that. The whole point of that shift to the right was that these are winning strategies. Well, now they've lost on their own metrics. So and now what's the point of continuing this? So
exactly. Hillary outspent Trump 2-1. That's the statistic that just blows my mind. She outspent the billionaire. It's like, whoa, and she still lost. I guess an utter moron,